Hello, welcome to my channel, Wailani Creations. My name is Wendy and today we'll be making these 3 pairs of earrings. Let's go from easy to hard. So we'll start with this bow and arrow earrings. And then we'll make these triple heart earrings. And then finally these princess heart earrings. We will be using the usual tools to make the 3 pairs of earrings. We will be using a wire cutter, nylon jaw plier, chain nose plier, and round nose plier. For the bow and arrow earrings, we will be using this round shaping tool to form the bow. If you don't have that at home, that's fine. You can find anything at home that is round like this. And for the hearts, we will be using this smaller round shaping tool. If you don't have this, I think a pen or even the size of a permanent marker will work. Alright, we will start by making this bow and arrow earrings. This earring should take no more than 5 minutes to make. Here I have 2.5 inches of 18 gauge wire and 2 chains that are about 3/4 inches long. You'll want to make sure that the chains you use can go through an 18 gauge wire. And to dangle the hearts, we will use a 1 1/4 inch long chain. You'll need a heart for the arrow and a 3/4 inch wire. This wire is 20 gauge. And of course, we need an air wire and jump ring. As usual, I start by straightening the wire. In fact, I straighten the wire before cutting it to make sure that I cut the right length. Next, we will form the curve shape using this shaping tool. If you have one of these 6-in-1 tools, you can use the smallest circle here to ensure that the loops on both sides are the same size, but if you don't have that, you can use your round nose plier too. Alright, so now I am forming a loop on each end of the wire. Next, we will open up the loop with a chain nose plier and then adding a chain that is 3/4 inch long. Close the loop and repeat on the other side. Now we will use a jump ring to connect the top of both chains together. Next, we will add the longer chain and the bow that we just created to the earring hook. Next, we will add the heart. Start by taking the 3/4 inch 20 gauge wire and bending the bottom slightly. Use a chain nose plier to squeeze it together. Put the heart through the wire, and before you form the loop on the top, just make sure that the wire is facing straight like this and not sideways like this, so that when you form the loop, the wire is going straight down like an arrow. Now we are forming a small loop on the top of the heart. Once this is done, we will add the heart to the bottom of the chain. Open up the loop, add the chain, and close the loop. So we've completed the earring, but I do want to show you a second option. If you want to take it up a notch, you could flatten the wire with a hammer. Here I am using 16 gauge because I do want a thicker wire look. So here you just hammer it on both sides and both ends until it's flattened. And here's the difference between the hammered versus non-hammered look. Alright, next we will be making this triple heart earring. For this earring, I will be using 22 gauge wire. This one is 4 inches long and this other one is 5 inches long. We will need a heart crystal to dangle in the middle. If you don't have a heart crystal, you can dangle anything you want or make a smaller heart to put in the middle, or just don't put anything at all. We will need 2 small chains to connect the hearts together and connect to the earring hook, and also a jump ring and an earring hook. For this heart, I used the Red Hot bead mix from thebeadmix.com. And for this heart, I used the Red Gingham bead mix. She also has a pink crushed bead mix that I really like, and I used it for this earring. I will include a link in the descriptions to her website. As usual, we will start by straightening the wire with a nylon jaw plier. Here I am straightening the 5 inches long wire, and then we will straighten the 4 inches long wire. Next, we will bend the wires in the middle, so I will bend this 4 inches long wire in the middle at 2 inches. And now we will bend the 5 inches long wire in the middle at 2.5 inches. We'll bend it further, first using our hands and then using the chain nose plier to squeeze it closer together. Repeat with the other wire. We will shape the 4-inch long wire using the 5th circle here. Place the part of the wire that is folded on this shaping tool and then bending it about 60% around the circle. See that there is a little bit sticking out here, so I'll use the nylon jaw plier to push it in all the way. For the 5-inch long wire, we'll use the 6th circle here. So repeat the steps, placing the folded part of the wire on the tool and then bending it about 60% of the way. Again, we'll use the nylon jaw plier to push it in all the way. Now we will open up the hearts. This is the 5-inch wire. And this is the 4-inch wire. Next, we will add seed beads to the smaller heart first. For this tutorial, we will use the red gingham bead mix. Add 5 seed beads to one side of the smaller heart. Now we will add a chain after those 5 seed beads. The length of the chain is up to you. For me, I just counted the number of links in the chain. I have 7 links here total. Now let's add seed beads to the rest of this side of the heart. For your reference, I added 5 seed beads here and 25 seed beads on this side. And I left a little bit of space at the end to create the loop, about 1/4 or a little bit more than 1/4 inch of wire here. Now we will use the round nose plier to create the loop, so placing the edge of the wire on the round nose plier and then bending it in a circle. I am making a very small loop here because I don't want the loop to be too obvious. Now that we're done with this side of the heart, we will be working with the bigger heart. We will start by adding 3 seed beads to one side of the bigger heart, and then we'll put the wire through the 3rd link on this chain, leaving 1 link between the 2 hearts. You see here I have 1 link between the 2 hearts, and the smaller heart have 5 seed beads and the bigger heart have 3 seed beads, creating a diagonal line with the chain. And now we will add seed beads to the rest of the bigger heart. I have added seed beads to this side of the heart. For reference, there's 3 seed beads on one side and 37 seed beads on the other side, so a total of 40 seed beads. Now we will create a loop at this end of the wire, again making a loop that is as small as possible using the round nose plier. Here we've completed one side and we will work on the other side now. The steps to this side is slightly different. I added 5 seed beads to the smaller heart and 3 seed beads to the bigger heart. And now we will add the chain to both hearts at the same time. You want the wires to be closer together so you can add the chain. Again, placing the 1st link to the smaller heart and the 3rd link to the bigger heart. This side was definitely trickier. I was even out of frame while adding the chain to the wire. Anyway, again, just make sure that you have the 1st link through the smaller heart and the 3rd link through the bigger heart with 1 link between the 2 hearts. Push the chain to the top of the heart. Next, we will add seed beads to this side of the smaller heart. Like the other side, I added 25 seed beads for a total of 30 seed beads. Now we will create a small loop on this side of the heart. Now we will connect the bottom of the heart together by opening up 1 loop and placing the other loop through. We'll close the loop and then the smaller heart is finished. Let's add seed beads to this side of the bigger heart. Again, I added 37 seed beads after the chain for a total of 40 seed beads. We will create a small loop here, and once the loop is created, we'll open it up and connect the other side of the heart to it. Now we will massage the hearts a little bit to make sure that they are consistent in shape. Now let's connect the chains together on the top using a jump ring, and then we'll add the earring hook. hardest part about making heart earrings is that when you're making a pair of earrings, you have to make sure that both hearts are consistent in shape and size. Here I am placing the one I just made over the one I made previously to make sure they are consistent in shape and size. Next, we'll add the crystal heart. So 20 gauge 3/4 inch wire. Create a small loop on one end of the wire, and then we will add the heart in and create another loop on the top of the heart. Now we will hang this crystal to the smaller heart in the middle. We have completed the triple heart earrings. Next up is this princess heart earring. To make this heart, we will use the pink crushed bead mix from thebeadmix.com. Again, I will have a link in the descriptions. We will also use these 4mm pearls and an 8mm crystal. I also added this white flower here. If you don't have one, you can just use a bead, a crystal, or just use a longer chain. Of course, you also need an earring hook, 2 jump rings, and 2 short chains. Again, if you are not adding the flower, you can add a longer chain. It's up to you. Here I have 6 inches of 22 gauge wire and 14 inches of 28 gauge wire. And we'll also need about 3/4 inches of 20 gauge wire for the flower. Instead of bending the 6-inch long wire in half, we will bend it at the 2 and 3/4 inch mark. I will start by bending it with my hand, and then we will close it up further with a chain nose plier. And here you'll see one side is about 1/2 inch longer. Now we will form the round part of the heart, wrapping it around this round shaping tool, covering about 60% of the circle, and we'll use the nylon jaw plier to push the edge in. Next, we will unfold the wire and open up the heart. And you'll see that there is a lot of wire left, and that is intentional because we will use that wire to wrap around the crystal. You see here, one side is longer than the other, and we will start with the longer side. We will wrap this 28 gauge wire around the longer side. We will wrap the 28 gauge wire around the bigger wire about 10 times. Now we push the 28 gauge wire down, closing up the gaps. And now we push it all the way to the V part of the heart. Let's cut off the shorter tail of the 28 gauge wire. And then use the chain nose plier to pinch in any wire that is sticking out. Now let's add a pearl to the 22 gauge wire and then C beads to the 28 gauge wire. Since my pearl is 4mm in size, I added 5 C beads. My C beads are size 11. So if you have a bigger pearl or a smaller pearl, you would add more or less C beads here. Here, my 28 gauge wire is below the 22 gauge wire. So when I wrap the C bead around the pearl, I will bring the 28 gauge wire above the 22 gauge wire. Wrap it around the 22 gauge wire and then go over it again one more time. You want to pull and tug the wire as much as possible. You want the C beads to hug the pearl nicely. Now we will repeat by adding a pearl and 5 seed beads, and then we will wrap the 28 gauge wire around the 20 gauge wire 2 times. Repeat by adding pearls and wrapping seed beads all the way to the end of this side of the heart. Okay, so I have added 7 pearls here. I have enough space to add 1 more, but I want to keep the heart smaller, so I didn't want to add 8 total. Also, you just want to make sure that you add the same amount of pearls to both hearts. Next, we will wrap the 28 gauge wire around the bottom V of the heart. Let's wrap the 28 gauge wire around the 22 gauge wire 6 times. Push down the wire and close the gaps. Now we will form the V shape of the heart, so push the pearls and beads up and then bend the wire using a chain nose plier. Now we will wrap the 28 gauge wire 6 times on this side of the heart. Make sure you pull and tighten the wire while you wrap it around. Add 1 pearl to the 22 gauge wire and 5 seed beads to the 28 gauge wire. And then wrap the seed beads around the pearl like what we did at first. Let's take a look at a finished earring to see what we do next. On the left side, I have 7 pearls. I added 1 here already and then 4 more on top because to me the crystal is about the size of 2 pearls. So that kind of makes it a total of 7 pearls on the side as well. So now for the one that we're working on, I will add 4 pearls on top and then the crystal. So I added 4 pearls and a crystal to this part of the wire. Next, I will put this other wire through the crystal. This is why we are working with 22 gauge wire instead of a thicker wire because it is more flexible and easier to reshape. Now it looks kind of like a heart and you can pull on both sides of the wire to adjust the size and shape of the heart. And once you get it kind of to the shape and size that you like, you bend the wires slightly. Once you bend the wires, the heart won't pop back open, but you're still able to adjust and reshape the size of the heart. So here I'm just constantly pulling and playing with the extra wires until I get the heart to the size that I like. We'll also want to compare to the first heart that we already made to make sure that they are the same shape and size. So this side is too short, so I'm going to adjust it a little bit more. I'm going to unbend the wire with this chain nose plier and then pushing the wire up slightly to make the heart bigger. Let's compare the hearts again. This time I am pretty happy with how they turned out. The size is pretty consistent, so I am good with leaving the wire and the crystal where they are. And now I will wrap the wire around the crystal. Just spinning it with my hand, wrapping the wire around the crystal and then around the 22 gauge wire like this. Now we will wrap the other wire around the other side of the crystal as well. And then wrapping it around the 22 gauge wire going in a circle. And then we will fix and cut off the extra wire later. I like to keep it here in case we need to make adjustments. I will put this 28 gauge wire through the crystal as well. When the wire looks tight like this, I don't like to just force it because it might break the wire. So here I am using the round nose plier to loosen up the wire and shape it a little bit, make it more round before putting it through again. Okay, so we have brought the 28 gauge wire over. Now let's finish wrapping this thicker wire around and then we'll cut off any extras so that we don't accidentally poke ourselves. This other wire is shorter, so we'll use the chain nose plier to help wrap it around and then we'll cut off any extra wires again. Once we cut off the extra wire, we will use the chain nose plier to flatten any wire that is sticking out. Next, we will wrap this 28 gauge wire around the 22 gauge wire twice, and then we will start adding pink seed beads again. Just like before, add 5 pink seed beads and then wrap the seed beads around the white pearls. Repeat this until you've completed the last 3 pearls. Now that I have finished all of the pearls, I will wrap this 28 gauge wire around the 22 gauge wire 10 times, just like what we did in the very beginning. It's definitely harder now because the heart is entirely closed, but we're almost done, so stay with me. I'm going to edit out the rest of me making the circles, but just make sure you do it at least 10 times. Yay, now that we're done, let's cut off extra wires and then use the chain nose plier to flatten any that is sticking out. I am also going to use the chain nose plier to make the bottom more pointy, similar to what I did with the other heart. Let's use a jump ring to connect the chains to the heart. I am placing the jump ring between the first and second pearls. Now I added the chain and then I'm going to close the jump ring. Another tricky part here, with all the pearls and seed beads in the way, it's a little bit hard to close the jump ring. Now we will repeat on the other side. Putting the jump ring between the first and second pearls, and then adding the chain, and then closing the jump ring up. Next, we'll work on adding the flower to the top. We'll start by creating a small loop on one end of the 20 gauge wire. The wire is 3/4 inches long. Now we will add the flower and then creating a loop on the other end of the wire. Again, if you don't have a flower, you can just use any crystals or big beads, or even just use a longer chain. Now we'll open up one loop and put both chains through this loop. And now close up this loop. Last step is to add an earring hook to the earring. We have completed all 3 pairs of earrings. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. I will see you next time. Thank you and bye!